You ever feel like a night's too quiet? Not peaceful or wrong. Like the silence is holding itself back, waiting for something to happen. That's what it felt like for me. I was lying on my bed, phone in hand, letting my thumb scroll through whatever random garbage the internet threw at me. My ceiling fan hummed overhead, that dull, endless drone filling the emptiness of the house. Mom and Dad were supposed to be home by now. They texted earlier, around 6. Mom, running late? Don't wait up for dinner. That was 3 hours ago. I told myself not to be weird about it. Adults are busy, Caleb, I thought. They're probably stuck in traffic or grabbing groceries or something. But the longer the silence stretched, the heavier it got. I did what I always do when my brain wouldn't shut up, dove down an internet rabbit hole. I ended up on a weird little site about local ghost stories, then jumped to a forum thread about real-life disappearances because of course that's exactly what someone who's already freaked out should read. Then I saw it. It wasn't on the forum. It wasn't even a pop-up ad. Just a plain little link tucked between articles like it had always been there. Obituaries near you, updated today. I don't know why I clicked it. Curiosity maybe? Or maybe that sinking feeling in my gut wanted confirmation something was wrong. At first, it was just names I didn't recognize. Old folks mostly. Pictures of strangers smiling politely from the afterlife. I kept scrolling until my brain hiccuped like it couldn't process what I was looking at. There they were. Mark and Evelyn Mercer, loving parents, devoted friends. Survived by their son, Caleb Mercer. That's my name. My parents' names. The breath got punched right out of me. The photo above the text wasn't just some stock image, it was them. That same picture from our trip to Lake Huron last summer. I remember Dad making a dumb joke about seagulls photobombing us. But the part that really made my skin crawl? The date underneath their names. Posted, February 24th, 2025. Today. My mouth went dry. This had to be a mistake. A sick prank, maybe. Someone hacked the site and put their names there for laughs? But who would do that? Nobody I knew would go that far. I grabbed my phone so fast it nearly slipped out of my hands. Called Mom first. 1 ring. 2. Straight to voicemail. Okay, try Dad. Same result. The calls didn't even feel like they were reaching them. The house suddenly didn't feel like my house anymore. Every shadow stretched a little too long. Every tick of the clock sounded like it was counting down to something I couldn't see. Then my phone vibrated. A text. From Mom. We're home soon. Don't worry, sweetie. Relief hit me like a wave until I noticed the time. 3:17 a.m. I checked the clock on my phone again. It was 11:42 p.m. That message wasn't late. It was early. And then I heard it. The front door unlocking. The sound of the front door unlocking shouldn't have been terrifying. It's just the door, right? It's supposed to mean they're home. But the second I heard that soft metallic click, every hair on my body stood up. I stayed completely still, listening. No voices. No casual conversation about the long day. Just the slow creak of the door swinging open. Mom? Dad? I couldn't bring myself to say anything out loud. My fingers tightened around my phone like it was the only real thing left in the world. The message from Mom, "We're home soon," still sat on my screen, glowing like a threat instead of a promise. Footsteps padded across the hallway floor. Light ones. Deliberate. I texted her back. Are you home? No reply. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. The doorknob rattled like someone was testing it, checking if I'd locked it. I hadn't. I never needed to before. Then, soft as a whisper, a voice. Caleb? Mom's voice. But not quite. It was too smooth, too careful, like someone had practiced it 1,000 times and still couldn't get the rhythm right. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak, even if my voice shook. Mom? The pause on the other side of the door stretched too long. Sweetie, open the door. That wasn't how my mom talked. Too calm. Too flat. My real mom would have been rattling off questions already. Why was I locked in? Was I okay? Had I been watching scary videos again? This voice was waiting for permission to come in. I stood up slowly, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might shake the floorboards loose. I didn't dare speak again, I just texted her one more time. If you're outside my room, answer this message. The phone stayed silent. Then, from the other side of the door, the voice repeated, softer this time, like it was trying to coax me out of hiding. We just want to talk, Caleb. I stepped back. And that's when I heard it, another noise. From downstairs. The front door unlocking again. 2 sets of footsteps now. 1 set upstairs. 1 downstairs. Both moving like they knew exactly where I was. I didn't think, I ran. Out my window, into the freezing air, bare feet slamming onto the grass below. The cold bit into my skin, but fear burned hotter than any wind chill could. I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's house, my knuckles rapping furiously on their door. Lights flipped on inside. Mr. Danvers answered, eyes bleary with sleep. Caleb? What the hell, are you okay? I could barely speak. Someone's in my house. They sound like my parents, but... His face went pale. Your parents? His voice dropped low, cautious. I thought they were, son. I saw the police at your house this afternoon. That stopped me cold. What are you talking about? He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. I figured you were with other family. I didn't want to say anything unless you brought it up, but your parents were in a car accident this morning. My stomach flipped. No, that's not true. He nodded slowly, painfully. I saw the coroner's van, Caleb. I'm so sorry. I took a shaky breath, my head spinning. The obituary. The texts. The voices in my house. If my parents were dead, who was pretending to be them? I don't remember going inside Mr. Danvers' house. One second I was standing on his porch, shaking so hard my teeth felt like they might crack. The next, I was slumped on his living room couch, staring at a mug of tea I didn't remember accepting. His words kept echoing in my head. I saw the coroner's van, Caleb. Your parents were in a car accident this morning. It couldn't be true. No, I texted my mom. She texted me back. But that text had come in early. Hours before it should have. And those things in the house, whatever had warned their voices, had answered when I called for them. Caleb? Mr. Danvers' voice pulled me back. His eyes were full of the kind of pity I didn't want right now. I already called the police, okay? They're on their way. You're safe here. Safe? The word felt meaningless now. I shook my head. You don't get it, I muttered. There's something in my house. My voice cracked, low and hollow. They're pretending to be my parents. His brow creased with something that looked almost like fear. What do you mean, pretending? They sounded just like them. Same voices, same way of speaking, but it wasn't them. It couldn't have been. My hands were shaking so badly I had to shove them between my knees to keep from falling apart completely. And there were two of them, one upstairs, one downstairs. They knew exactly where I was. The lights flickered. I froze, staring at the ceiling light as it buzzed faintly overhead. Mr. Danvers noticed it too. Old wiring, he said quickly, though his voice lacked conviction. This house, sometimes the power. The flickering stopped. And then my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it, but my hand moved anyway, like I wasn't in control anymore. New message from Mom, come home, Caleb. It's cold out there. No timestamp. No sign it had even gone through the network. Just those 7 words staring back at me like an open grave. Is it from your mom? Mr. Danvers asked. I nodded slowly. They're not supposed to be here, I whispered. If they're dead, how are they still texting me? Mr. Danvers crouched in front of me, his face serious in a way I'd never seen before. Listen to me. No matter what happens tonight, don't answer those texts again. Don't call them. Whatever this is, it's not your parents. The lights flickered again. Longer, this time. Then there was a sound from outside the window. A soft, rhythmic tap-tap-tap. Mr. Danvers turned toward the curtain, moving carefully. Stay here, he whispered. But I couldn't stay. Not when I knew. I knew who it would be. Wait, I choked out, my voice raw and dry. Don't open it. He ignored me. Reached for the curtain. Pulled it aside. And standing on the other side of the glass was my mother. Her hair was damp from the rain. She was still wearing the jacket I'd seen her in this morning, and her eyes, God, her eyes looked normal. Kind. Except she was smiling too wide. Too still. Like her face had been stretched into an expression she didn't understand. Caleb, she said, though the glass muffled her voice. It's cold outside. Let me in, baby. Mr. Danvers stumbled back, his face going white. Jesus Christ, he muttered. That's... No, I said, grabbing his arm, my nails digging into his sleeve. That's not her. It's wearing her. His mouth worked silently like he couldn't form words. The tapping started again, faster now. Urgent. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. The front door rattled suddenly as if someone was testing the lock. Another voice joined hers. From the back door this time. Caleb. Open the door, son. Dad. Or whatever was left of him. The lights went out. Everything inside me screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Nowhere that felt safe anymore. And then the worst sound yet. The click of the front door unlocking. I turned to Mr. Danvers, my voice low and shaking. Did you lock the door? His silence was all the answer I needed. Go upstairs, I told him. Now. We moved fast, his old knees creaking under the strain, my heart beating so loud it drowned out every other sound. We reached his bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it behind us. Call the police again, I said, barely able to breathe. His hands fumbled with the phone. Dialed. Pressed it to his ear. Silence. No signal, he whispered. They're jamming it or something. They. I hated that we were even using that word. Like it was normal. Like the things downstairs had rules. I grabbed his old baseball bat from the corner of the room, an antique, probably more decorative than useful, but it felt better than nothing. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, creaking up the stairs one at a time. They were in the house. Caleb, Mom's voice called again, this time from the hallway just outside the door. Why are you hiding from us? Don't listen, Mr. Danvers whispered. His eyes were glassy with fear. They want you to open it. That's all they need. The doorknob rattled once, twice. Then the voice changed. Caleb, honey, please, we're so cold. That wasn't my mother's voice anymore. It was closer. Lower. Rotten. I squeezed the bat tighter. I didn't care if this was real or if my brain had snapped from grief and fear. I wasn't going to let whatever wore their faces pull me into that darkness with them. The door shuttered with a soft, deliberate knock. And then I heard my father's voice, so close it might have been right by my ear. Let us in, Caleb. We miss you so much. The knock on the bedroom door wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Tap, tap, tap. I could feel it in my bones, like the sound traveled through the wood, through my skull, into my head, and settled behind my eyes. Mr. Danvers was frozen next to me, clutching his useless phone like it was a crucifix. His mouth worked like he wanted to pray but couldn't remember the words. I couldn't take my eyes off the door. The knob was trembling now, slowly, steadily turning like someone on the other side knew we were too scared to stop it. But here's the thing that hit me like a punch to the stomach. The door was locked from the inside. It shouldn't be turning. I swallowed the scream rising in my throat and gripped the bat tighter. Get behind me, I whispered. Mr. Danvers didn't argue. I think he knew something worse than both of us was about to come through that door. Then the voice changed again. Caleb, my mom's voice rasped like someone had taken her throat and shredded it from the inside. We're already inside. We just want to talk. The door stopped shaking. The knob clicked back into place, still locked. I let out a shaky breath until I heard it. A creak from behind us. I spun around, my stomach flipping over itself. The closet door, half open. Shadows stretched long and thin along the walls as if the light had forgotten how to behave in this room. Then something moved. A hand. Pale. Too long. Fingers bending the wrong way as they curled around the closet door's edge. Mr. Danvers didn't see it. He was still staring at the bedroom door, too scared to notice the real danger was already behind us. You should have let us in, Caleb. The voice came from inside the closet. I didn't think, I just grabbed Mr. Danvers by the arm and yanked him toward the window. We need to go. Now. Button. No time. I should have been faster. The closet door exploded open with a sickening crack of splintering wood. I didn't see all of it, just flashes, pale arms bending in ways no human body could, a face stretched too wide over sharp, gleaming teeth. Mr. Danvers screamed as something grabbed him, something that looked like my father's face but hollowed out from the inside, like a mask stretched too thin over broken bones. I swung the bat. Hard. It connected with something solid and a horrible wet crunch echoed through the room. The thing that wore my father's face let go for half a second, just enough time for me to shove Mr. Danvers out the window. Go. Run. I followed, landing hard on the wet grass outside. My breath was ragged, my arms screaming from the effort. We didn't stop running. Not until the house was a shrinking shape behind us. But the worst part wasn't the thing in the closet. Not the voice at the door. It was the fact that the front door to Mr. Danvers' house never opened. Whatever they were. They never needed doors. We found ourselves in the middle of the street, breathless, soaking wet from the rain that had started somewhere between the first scream and the last swing of the bat. Mr. Danvers was shaking violently, his face pale as paper. What was that? I didn't have an answer. Then my phone buzzed again. New message from Dad, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I almost threw the phone into the road. Caleb, Mr. Danvers' voice was barely a whisper. He was staring over my shoulder, his eyes wide and glassy with terror. I turned slowly, every part of me screaming, don't look, don't look, don't look. The street was empty. At first. Then the headlights appeared. A car. Familiar. Too familiar. The family SUV. My parents' car. It rolled toward us at a snail's pace, the headlights off, moving wrong. Like something inside it didn't know how to drive but had watched someone else do it 100 times and thought, yes. This is what humans do. Run, I whispered. The doors opened before it even stopped moving. Two shadows stepped out, tall, slow-moving figures with my parents' faces stitched onto them like badly worn Halloween masks. But this time, they didn't speak. They just smiled. And then the real horror hit me like a good punch. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at Mr. Danvers. "You were never supposed to help him," my mother's voice whispered, low and rotten like wet earth under nails. Before I could move, they were on him. No running. No screaming. Just silence, like the shadows had swallowed the sound hole. And I just stood there, paralyzed by fear, watching the only person who tried to help me disappear beneath hands that bent in too many directions. Then the car door opened again. An empty seat waited inside. For me. The phone buzzed in my hand one last time. New message from Mom: "Come home, Caleb. We're waiting." I didn't run. I should have. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to turn around, sprint into the dark, and never look back. But I couldn't move, not because I was frozen with fear, but because deep down, I already knew something far worse. There was nowhere left to run. The SUV idled quietly in the middle of the street, door yawning open like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. The glow from the dashboard cast a pale light across the seats, and the silhouette of a figure sat quietly behind the wheel. Dad. Or at least, what was left of him. The phone buzzed again in my hand, the vibration low and steady like a pulse trying to drag me under. New message from Dad: "Time to come home, son." I couldn't look at what was left of Mr. Danvers. I didn't want to see the exact moment the light left his eyes or the way those things wore his silence like a trophy. The air around me felt thick, heavier with every breath, like grief made solid. But then something clicked. They could have taken me at any moment. Every time they got close, they whispered, knocked, texted, invited me. They needed me to say yes. I turned toward the car, the shadows stretching long under the dead weight of the streetlights. My reflection shimmered in the window, eyes hollow, skin pale. I barely looked like myself anymore. Maybe that was the point. Maybe they wanted me hollow. "What do you want from me?" My voice cracked like glass under pressure. The figure in the driver's seat didn't move. But the voice did. It slithered through the air, familiar yet empty. "We just want to take you home, Caleb. You don't belong here anymore." I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. "You're not my parents." Silence. Then, a sound like wet leaves being dragged across pavement. "We were never supposed to be." That's when I saw it, the reflection. In the car's window, the figures weren't wearing my parents' faces anymore. They were wearing mine. My reflection blinked when I didn't. Smiled when my lips stayed locked in place. Behind me, dozens of thin shadows writhed in the street, stretching and unfolding from cracks in the pavement, from the black gaps between houses, from the sky itself. Each of them wore a version of me. But they weren't perfect. One had my face with its mouth stretched ear to ear like someone had slit it open just to make room for a grin that didn't belong. Another had hollow, black eyes like holes carved into a mask. They didn't want me dead. They wanted to replace me. The phone buzzed one last time in my hand. New message from unknown: "Just say yes." My thumb hovered over the screen. The air around me vibrated with a thick, impossible pressure as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And then I realized the most terrifying truth of all. This wasn't about me being afraid. It was about making me choose. Because once I said yes, they become me. I don't remember making the decision. I just remember running past the SUV, past the shadows wearing my face, past the empty shell of Mr. Danvers lying cold on the pavement. But I wasn't running away. I was running home. The house loomed in the distance like a gravestone, every window dark, the door hanging wide open like a broken jaw. Inside, the air was heavier than before. Each step felt like wading through molasses, thick with grief and memory. The shadows didn't follow me this time. They didn't need to. Because I finally understood. I wasn't supposed to escape them. I was supposed to finish it. My parents' faces were waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the couch like nothing had changed, like they were still alive and this was just another night in the Mercer household. Mom's eyes were kind. Dad's hand rested gently on hers. They smiled, soft and patient. But their mouths didn't move when they spoke. "Just say yes, Caleb." I stared at them for what felt like hours. Every memory of laughter, every stupid joke, every warm meal around this couch, all of it twisted into something that didn't belong here anymore. "I miss you," I whispered. The smile grew wider. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. "No." The shadows screamed. The walls trembled, photos falling from nails, glass shattering across the floor. The air twisted, sharp and cold, as if the house itself was trying to rip apart at the seams. But I didn't move. I let it happen. Let the false voices wail and the reflections shatter around me. And when I opened my eyes, the house was empty. No shadows. No voices. Know them. Just silence. Real, peaceful silence. Epilogue. They never found Mr. Danvers. The police told me it was shock that I imagined it all because of what happened to my parents. The obituary stayed online for weeks before disappearing like it had never been there. But sometimes late at night, my phone still buzzes. New message from unknown. We're still waiting, Caleb. And one day I might answer. But not yet. Not yet.